Imagine you're stepping into a London that feels both incredibly solid and strangely shrouded in fog. It's the late Victorian era, and the air in 221B Baker Street is thick with the scent of strong tobacco and the quiet, focused energy of a man who sees things the rest of the world simply looks past. This is the world of Arthur Conan Doyle's Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, a collection that didn't just introduce us to a detective, but fundamentally changed how we think about mystery, logic, and the human character. At the center of it all is Sherlock Holmes. He's not a hero in the traditional sense. He's a specialist, a man who views his own mind as a high-precision instrument, and he treats emotions like grit in a sensitive machine. He wants a world of pure, cold, clinical facts. And then there's Dr. John Watson. Watson is our eyes and ears. He's a man of medicine and a man of action. But more importantly, he's the one who translates Holmes's brilliance into something we can actually understand. He's the bridge between Holmes's alien intellect and our own human experience. The stories in this collection don't follow a strict timeline, but they all share a certain DNA. They often find Holmes stepping in where the official systems of justice, the police, the law, the aristocracy, have failed. He's often a corrective force, a man who uses logic to navigate the messy, often unfair realities of Victorian society. The most famous thread in this collection, the one that truly defines the limits of Holmes's world, is the case of a scandal in Bohemia. It begins with a reunion. Watson and Holmes are back together in Baker Street, and before they've even settled into their chairs, Holmes is already dismantling Watson's recent life. He looks at Watson's tan, the calluses on his hands, the way he carries himself, and he reconstructs Watson's recent medical practice and his personal travels with terrifying accuracy. It's a demonstration of the core theme of the entire series, the distinction between merely seeing and truly observing. Most people see a man's face. Holmes reads a man's history. This skill is put to the ultimate test when a client arrives who is far from ordinary. He arrives incognito, travelling as a man named Count von Cram, but it's quickly revealed that he is the king of Bohemia. He isn't looking for a stolen jewel or a missing person, he's looking for a photograph. Years ago, the king had a passionate affair with a woman named Irene Adler. Now, as the king prepares to enter a political marriage that would secure his throne, Adler has resurfaced. She possesses a photograph of their past intimacy, and she intends to use it to prevent the marriage. To the king, she is a threat to his crown, a woman who could destroy his reputation with a single piece of paper. Holmes accepts the case, but he's working against a clock. He has 3 days before the royal betrothal is officially proclaimed. This is where we see the machinery of Holmes's mind in motion. He doesn't just use deduction, he uses theatre. He uses disguises, psychological manipulation, and a deep understanding of how people react under pressure. He starts by disguising himself as a disreputable groom to keep a close watch on Adler's movements. This leads to a twist that even Holmes didn't see coming. Adler has married. She has entered into a sudden, unplanned marriage with a lawyer named Godfrey Norton. In a moment of pure social chaos, Holmes finds himself drafted to serve as a witness at their wedding ceremony at St. Monica's Church. It's a moment that highlights the unpredictability of life. Even the most calculated plans can be disrupted by the messy, spontaneous reality of human connection. Holmes realizes that the photograph won't be kept in a safe or a bank. It will be kept by a woman who knows its value. He needs to get inside her private residence at Briony Lodge, and he needs to do it without raising suspicion. He orchestrates a complex ruse. He stages a street brawl outside her house and fakes a head injury, playing the part of a confused, wounded man to gain entry into her sitting room. While he's inside, the plan shifts from observation to action. He signals Watson, who is waiting nearby, to set off a smoke rocket. As the room fills with smoke, simulating a sudden fire, Holmes watches. He's not looking for a way out, he's looking for how she reacts. In the ensuing panic, as the instinct for survival takes over, Adler instinctively reaches for her most precious possession. Holmes watches as she retrieves the photograph from a hidden compartment behind a sliding panel. He has what he came for, or so he thinks, but as he leaves, a mysterious stranger recognizes him by name, leaving a lingering sense of unease. The mission was a success, but the victory feels incomplete. When the King of Bohemia returns to Baker Street, he expects a resolution. He expects Holmes to tell him that the photograph has been secured and the threat neutralized. But Holmes's report is different. He tells the king that Adler has married and fled the country. He informs the king that the woman he considered a dangerous predator has actually become a woman of agency, using her wits to secure her own future. Holmes goes back to Adler's ransacked residence one last time. He finds that while the house has been turned upside down, a hidden compartment remains. Inside, he finds a letter and the photograph. This is the moment of true revelation. Adler hadn't kept the photo to blackmail the king. She had kept it as a safeguard. She knew that if she were ever threatened by his power, she would have the means to protect herself and her new husband. She didn't want to destroy the king. She wanted to ensure he couldn't destroy her. The king is relieved. The photograph is no longer a weapon of scandal, but a shield of protection. But for Holmes, the impact is much deeper. He realizes that he has been outwitted, not by a criminal, but by a person who used intuition and adaptability to bypass his perfect logical system. From that moment on, Holmes's view of the world shifts. He no longer refers to Irene Adler simply as a client or a subject of an investigation. He calls her the woman. It's not a romantic title. The text is very clear that Holmes felt no love for her, but it is a title of profound respect. She is the one person who proved that human emotion and the unpredictable nature of the human spirit can outmaneuver even the most brilliant, detached logic. When we look at these stories as a whole, we see a recurring tension between emotion and reason. Holmes views emotion as grit in a sensitive instrument. He believes that to be a perfect detective, one must be a machine, free from the distractions of passion or prejudice. But the stories, especially the encounter with Adler, suggest that this is a flawed philosophy. Logic is a powerful tool, but it is limited. It can track a footprint or analyze a bloodstain, but it struggles to account for the sudden, irrational, and deeply human decisions that drive people. There is also a subtle theme of social justice woven through the collection. Holmes often operates in the shadows of a rigid class system. He frequently finds himself acting as a corrective to systemic injustices, often standing in the gap when the law is too slow, too biased, or too focused on the interests of the powerful. He doesn't care about the social standing of his clients. He cares about the truth of the facts. This brings us to the idea of observation versus seeing. This is the heartbeat of the entire Sherlock Holmes mythos. We see the world every day, but we don't truly observe it. We see the surface, the immediate, the obvious. Holmes's gift, and his burden, is that he cannot unsee the implications of what he looks at. He sees the history in a smudge of ash. He sees the character in a frayed cuff. He sees the world as a series of interconnected clues, a web of cause and effect that most people are too busy or too distracted to notice. But the ultimate lesson of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is found in the limits of that very method. Even the most perfect deductive system has a blind spot, and that blind spot is the human heart. Irene Adler was the exception that proved the rule. She wasn't a puzzle to be solved by a formula. She was a person who reacted to a situation with a brilliance that was intuitive rather than purely logical. She used the very tools Holmes relied on: disguise, deception, and psychological pressure. But she used them with a sense of purpose that was driven by self-preservation and agency, not just the cold pursuit of a goal. In the end, the stories leave us with a version of Sherlock Holmes that is more human because of his failures. He is a man who can solve the most complex riddles of the criminal underworld, yet he remains perpetually humbled by the complexity of a single, determined woman. He is a master of logic, but he is ultimately a student of the human condition, learning through every case that while facts may tell us what happened, it is the unpredictable, passionate nature of humanity that tells us why. As we close this look at the adventures of the great detective, we're left with a sense of a man who is constantly refining his instrument, always searching for the next clue, yet always being reminded that the world is far more colourful, far more messy, and far more surprising than any single mind can ever fully contain.